Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a wonderful show planned for you today. Briahna, I think we broke a very long streak of not matching at all. We've got a little bit of similarity.
We got a little bit of green simpatico. We used to be so good with this.
I know. We were in sync for a long time, and we've just not been happening.
All right. I'm going to be thinking really hard about your wardrobe at like 8:15 tomorrow. You do the same, and we'll see if we can keep this going.
All right. Well, in more serious news, what are we talking about today?
Well, Robby, Tucker Carlson is hitting back at critics who say previously unseen footage from January 6th should remain out of the public domain.
And for 26 months, that footage was held from the American public. The January 6th committee made certain. Now, the Justice Department also kept a lid on that video footage. And in fact, in some cases, DOJ did not share it with criminal defendants who'd been charged on January 6th in violation of their constitutional rights. So we felt it was a public service to bring what we could to you. There was no justification for keeping this secret any longer, and a powerful argument to be made that sunlight is always and everywhere the best disinfectant. And in fact, because it was video evidence, it is to some extent self-explanatory. Anyone can look at the tape and decide what he or she thinks of it.
Yesterday, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer slammed Carlson's coverage and called for Fox News to shut it down. Quote, to say the January 6th attack was not violent is a lie. Fox News must order Tucker Carlson to stop promoting the big lie and stop defending the insurrectionists. Here he is at the Capitol.
These lies continue tonight. Rupert Murdoch, who has admitted they were lies and said he regretted it, has a special obligation to stop Tucker Carlson from going on tonight now that he's seen how he has perverted and slimed the truth, and from letting him go on again and again and again. Not because their views deserve such opprobrium, but because our democracy depends on it.
Now, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance said in response to Schumer's comments, quote, today I was asked by multiple reporters about Tucker's show last night. I was asked 0 times about one of the most powerful figures in government actively promoting censorship of a media figure. The assault on our democracy is this.
I agree with J.D. Vance. I don't think it's appropriate at all for a political figure like Chuck Schumer to be I get he's giving his opinion, fine, but he's saying, he's implying all the government power that comes with, his office, that he would marshal that against Tucker for saying things he doesn't like. Now, you don't have to think this was a good segment or it was a good idea. He absolutely has the right to release this footage, the video footage. I think the public should decide for themselves what they think about additional context for what happened on January 6th. To say that's a threat to democracy is basically to say that people being left to develop their own ideas or conclusions about things is a threat to democracy, which is like a self-defeating idea. Well, democracy is so fragile, it must be zealously gate-kept and guarded by powerful Democrats, is what he's saying effectively. So
let's allow that the release of the footage itself is, if not good, then justifiable and defensible, especially given that there hasn't really been much follow-up to the Democrats' claims that doing so was a security risk.
Yeah.
And Tucker Carlson said that he put showed the footage to Capitol Police before revealing it to the public to make a further assurance that there was nobody being put at risk there. That being said, what do you make of Schumer's claim that what Tucker Carlson is doing in characterizing the people who broke into the Capitol illegally as sightseers as opposed to people who broke the law? What do you make of him characterizing what Tucker is doing and downplaying that moment as the big lie, as telling the big lie in a way that would be in violation of what Fox News' leadership, Murdoch, wants to happen?
I mean, to my mind, I could be wrong. I thought the big lie is the idea that Donald Trump actually won the 2020 election, which is not true. Right, obviously Fox is involved in this lawsuit over whether not so much its hosts, but the guests they brought on promoted that view, and then eventually were kind of discredited and pushed. And the debate is over whether that happened rapidly enough. Were they putting them on and really knowing they shouldn't, and et cetera? And that's what's going on with that. And does it violate the law? I I don't know that January 6th was a big, messy, chaotic event involving, hundreds, thousands of people engaging in different kind of behaviors, many of which were contemptible, some of which were perfectly fine. Again, 99% of the people there are protesting peacefully. Now, in service of a cause you might think is wrong, but again, that's just democracy. People can have causes and protest in favor of them, even if you don't like them. I believe he pointed out that people smashed windows and broke down doors and fought with cops, and that was wrong. What I recall from the footage we watched yesterday of Tucker talking is that he characterized also a lot of just kind of walking around in lines. The police didn't really seem to care much about it, as not as riotous as we were made to believe, or by just showing footage constantly of windows being smashed and all that. I think that's how he characterized it. Right. I would characterize everyone who went in as a trespasser and a lawbreaker who should be dealt with to the fullest extent of the law. I have no problem with that at all. So fine, but I may disagree with points of how he characterized it, but I guess I'd have to look very closely to see exactly what he said.
Yeah, I tend to agree that there's some slippage here by Chuck Schumer. I think that I understand why Democrats want to characterize Tucker's use of this new footage as perpetuating the big lie, because even conservatives, as evidenced by the messages and texts and stuff that we've seen now from this Dominion lawsuit that you referenced, show that behind the scenes, Richard Murdoch, even Tucker Carlson himself, was very frustrated with the position that Donald Trump was putting him in, saying that he, passionately hates Trump, and all these other quotes that have come out of that story. Mm-hmm. I think where Democrats are on safer ground is to say, even you've admitted that the big lie is wrong, and now you're doing more of that. You're perpetuating the big lie. But I don't know if they've crossed their I's and dotted their T's on this argument that simply showing this footage is tantamount to lying about who won the election in 2020.
And maybe just let Tucker do it. Don't make such a big deal about it, right? Isn't the argument, I think you've made this argument, and yeah, it's true, clearly there's a lot of voters who have no appetite for this stuff whatsoever, even Republicans who are sick of it and are sick of Republican officials and leaders who keep talking about it. Yes. So just kind of let them, step on the rake and hit it in the face. It's not a threat to democracy. It's not, he did not go on, Tucker, by showing this footage, did not say that Donald Trump won the election. He did not. He added clarity. It's from the other side. We got a lot of from one side. Now we're getting it from the other side on what went on that very messy, very terrible day. I make no excuse. I will make no excuses for people who broke down windows and set things on fire and fought with the police in any context, including this one.
I think that the Democrats have really played this one wrong. They should have drawn from their Twitter files Matt Taibbi playbook and just written this one off as a nothing burger and tried to ignore it until it went away. Because honestly, it does feel like, from this perspective, Chuck Schumer giving these statements, people kind of anticipatorily criticizing what Tucker Carlson was going to do with the coverage without having actually seen it first. It felt like that umbrage gave a lot of life to this story and to footage which ultimately isn't that interesting or especially revealing.
Yeah, he's just showing. He's showing more footage. Like, he's right. He's showing actual video footage. He's not describing for you what he saw, and just you have to trust what he's summarizing what he saw. You can see the footage. Yeah. And I think it would be totally fine. It would be a totally different deal if Democrats were arguing that, well, we should have access to the footage, we can release it all, but they did have access. They just didn't do anything with it. And the idea that it undermined the safety of existing escape routes in the Capitol, that seems like a disinformation, to be clear.
Yeah, if they're going to make that argument, which they made quite a bit, I think they really have to prove it. Yeah. We've seen what Tucker showed now. At this time, we have to prove it. And if you have a conflicting testimony from Capitol Police officers who actually do think that there's a problem with this footage being out there, let's hear about it. But it feels at this point like the boy who cried wolf.
It did, no matter how you describe it, it did justify itself in that it showed that that government witness, Ray Epps, it contradicts what he said to Congress. I'm not saying that should change necessarily your impression of what happens.
But I mean, that is the danger of the Tucker, not testimony, but approach here. I understand that there's a conspiracy behind every wall.
Proof that a government witness lied in their testimony is in the public interest.
Yes, and that's
de facto.
It's sloppy for Democrats to have put themselves in that position.
Yeah.
But also, it is incumbent on you to prove the materiality of that if you are making these insinuations that 1/6 wasn't what the Democrats represented it was. And for me, from my perspective, it doesn't seem like the shaman walking through the halls at some points not being immediately arrested. Well, nobody was arrested because we know that the cops were overwhelmed. That's not, there's no argument there. And so I agree with Democrats who are making this case that Tucker Carlson is making the footage stand for something that isn't true, even at the same time as he can poke some holes in the Democrats' J6 hearing testimony, and rightly so, that's fine. My criticism of Dems is being sloppy, but I have a criticism of Tucker Carlson that it seems like he's misrepresenting reality on the basis that, you know, painting some picture that the cops should have outnumbered 10-1 or 100-1 or 1,000-1 or whatever it was, should have been, handcuffing people and corralling them into rooms as though they had the capacity to do so. And I think that kind of misrepresentation is why Democrats were frustrated that this was going to come out. I think there's a way to have insulated themselves against that, release the footage themselves, tell their own narrative, tell their own story, make the case. But I don't think implying that Tucker Carlson is doing election denial is necessarily the best approach here.
But I don't know. I'm not sure what the police should have done. I don't reflexively just assume that what they did was correct.
Well,
you probably don't either.
Me either. But I mean, I don't think this is rocket science. Play it out. You have talked about how many thousands of people were at the Capitol. Yeah. How many police were at the Capitol? What is your estimate of how much they were outnumbered?
Well, they were definitely outnumbered by the crowd. I don't know if they may have. I don't know. They weren't outnumbered at the time that the QAnon shaman was surrounded by like 9 of them at once. No, that's not the footage I saw. I didn't see the QAnon shaman surrounded by 9 police officers. Yeah, there's a part where he's just like, I don't know. It's odd. It's odd. No, I also don't think people are acting as though the QAnon shaman should have been a special target. There were people who were more threatening. There were the people who were breaking down the buildings, breaking down the walls. There were people who were armed with various tools, flags as poles as bayonets and things like that. That's the threat. If you're telling me that the QAnon shaman looked to be armed or was threatening people or beating up people and the cops ignored him for some reason, I think that is an indictment of the cops. And again, I have no issue indicting the cops' behavior here at this event, at this protest, at this insurrection, whatever you want to call it. The question is whether or not the fact that the cops didn't arrest the QAnon shaman on site is somehow evidence that the QAnon shaman wasn't breaking the law, or that it was evidence that, you know, he was invited and it was supposed to be there under the law. And he's, not been convicted. That's obviously not the case. All right, well, we got to leave it there. I'm looking forward to your radar. That's coming up next. Stay with us.